constructive points in my speech. Firstly, why this leads to more economically barren areas. Secondly, why suitability of regions doesn't decrease, and why companies still have a trainable workforce that they can then be persuaded to end up exploiting for their own benefits as well as for those of the community. Thirdly, regarding why this causes no particular guarantee of jobs and leads to an active level of marginalization. And lastly, regarding why this is an additional burden on the city structures and on the arterial systems of the city, which is essentially bad for everyone, including these individuals. But before that, firstly, the state message. The state message here is very clear, right? It is saying that the state is actively isolating you from the community with which you have the most ideological confirmation, right? It is not only breaking our families by making these individuals leave those regions, it is also breaking up the possibility of local association. Local association that is completely important for any sort of vocational training and or primordial setup of courses and or employability, right? Because those things end up happening and end up making a certain structure with which individuals can then embed their employability and therefore look at themselves as more or appear more appealing to private investors. We think when the state actively harms that, not only does it actively harm their prospects, but it sends the message that we do not care about your ideological confirmation to a community, which is essentially bad for the state to do. Secondly, it is the state's mandate to take care of these areas. We tell you the state has done that in the past, like giving tax breaks, which is mainly because of the tech center that it is today. We tell you that if the state does that, that is much better in order to grow these areas as opposed to just let them be as barren zones, as I will further analyze in my first constructed. Lastly, in rebuttal, right, we think that these regions can be persuaded, or companies can be persuaded to come to these regions, and as opposed to say shipbuilding in the north, right, now can make smaller boats and can possibly have different sorts of economic activities that are happening at the current moment. We tell you that is important, and when they are persuaded to do that, that leads to a greater level of circulation of economic activities and a greater level of employability. First constructive argument, economically barren areas. The complete stakeholder that they have neglected in the first page are the people who are not unemployed within these regions, right? The poor people who are dissatisfied with their jobs, right, will be even more dissatisfied when this place has been clearly painted as an area which is completely fruitless. When you paint that area as completely fruitless and do not allow private investment to happen and for private investors to in any which way come there, it makes it a depleted zone where the individuals who are not unemployed but who are employed and want to look for better prospects within there while still having the ideological confirmation to the area because they are born there, right? And because they have some sort of local allegiance and association. We tell you, you not only deplete their prospects of ever having better jobs, but you essentially lead to the complete depletion of the region, and you lead to that region being completely insular from the rest of society. It also sends a very clear message, which is that cities are intrinsically better than smaller towns. We tell you that is intrinsically bad. We don't want that to happen. We want the state to develop towns to have the same level of employability and of facilities that are needed for these individuals to become better. We also tell you it is intrinsically bad for family units to be dissociated because you're going to make people relocate forcefully. However, right, we also tell you that the trainability of the workforce is still there because at a certain point in time this was a region with flourishing employment, or these are people who can be employed in certain particular places. The trainability of the workforce is there. When industries enter there, they don't just want to employ, they also will want to train them in order to have a better workforce for their own, for the economic activity that they wish to further proliferate. Moreover, right, what we tell you is that there is no particular guarantee of a job when you relocate them to the city. When you relocate them to the city, there is a need for tech employees or employees with fancy degrees in investment banking. We don't think, right, that individuals who are currently unemployed are in any which way befitting. We tell you that does two things. Firstly, it makes it very clear to them that they are not fitting in the concept that the state has already legitimized as the good life, and therefore they have not been able to achieve that, or marginalizing them from the rest of society that is flourishing within that city because of their intrinsic lottery of birth. So they are essentially, right, propagating the lottery of birth even more by saying that we're going to put you in the city where you are not going to be able to get a job because of the fact that you do not have that qualification or the specific skill set that is required. I'll take you in a moment, is required, and therefore marginalizing you from the rest of society, leading to a greater level of divide within the city structure and a greater level of polarization within the city. Before I move on to the last point, go ahead.
Okay, considering that I already said that retraining and things will be in tandem with this, don't you think it's better to move them to areas where there are more jobs and more money?
Right. We don't think that you can train an individual within a short period of time to compensate for something that is intrinsically based on specialized skill sets and tech supports, right? We don't think that is something that is possibly done. And we think that in the event that you can train them, that is done much better by persuading these companies to enter these regions that are currently having low investment and to build those regions as opposed to sending a clear message that you are lost hope on that region. Lastly, regarding the additional burden to the cities, they've forgotten, right, that relocation means there's going to be a greater burden on public policy within the city. There's going to be a greater number of people for whom you need to account for in the city, and a greater number of people who are not employable within the city, who will then necessarily become a burden on the city. We tell you that leads to a decrease in the fruitful economic activities within the city, right? And that essentially damages the city life or the people who are living within the city from having a good social structure. We also tell you, right, that when they say that they have a necessity to overcome a level of psychological attachment, right, that necessarily means that they have condoned and agreed with the fact that there is a level of local association within these regions, right, that necessarily needs to be overcome. What they've overlooked is the fact that this local association is intrinsically important to those people and to the message that the state sends regarding what the state stance is on these individuals. We also tell you that these local associations have tangible advantages. Like they can set up crime watches to prevent petty crimes from happening. We tell you, in the absence of these local associations and ideological confirmation, right? It's a bad idea.